I've never shared anything like this before, but I feel compelled now, in the face of my greatest failure. If you've read the title, you might already know what this is about, and I understand if you don't want to continue. Grief is a strange thing. It manifests in different ways. For my wife, it turned into anger. For me, it's a need to keep busy. But now with everything else done, I've come here to write about my son, Isaac. The whole story of his life. The truth, raw and unfiltered. I apologize in advance if I ramble. When Isaac was born, it was like a light had appeared in my life. I had been a professor before, in academia, but nothing had ever mattered to me like Isaac did. After his birth, we had planned to leave him with my wife's parents so she could return to work. But 1 week of paternity leave wasn't enough for me. I wanted to stay home, to raise him, so I left my job. The university wasn't happy about it, but I was adamant. I would trade the security of my career for my son. Isaac was one of a kind, and I felt that nothing else mattered. Those early years with Isaac were challenging, to say the least. As a toddler, he was difficult. Despite all my experience in child development, there were days when I questioned whether I was fit to be a parent. But then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, something shifted. Isaac had a fall, his only real injury, and after that he seemed to change. His tantrums faded and he became a model child. He made me proud every single day. I had worries as he grew older though. After a year of public school, we decided to homeschool him. I was the one who suggested it, sure that he would do better in a more tailored learning environment. He thrived. Isaac was gifted, a brilliant student, devouring books on history, poetry, and science. It was everything I had hoped for in a child, and more. As Isaac got older, he avoided the typical pitfalls of adolescence. He never drank, smoked, or got involved in anything that might derail his future. He rebelled only a little, staying out late, a brief romance. My wife and I often exchanged glances at parties, seeing other parents struggle with unruly teens, and we would smile, feeling blessed that Isaac was different. Isaac went to college with a clear sense of purpose. Initially, he considered psychology, but I discouraged it. I told him it was a useless degree, a waste of time. Instead, Isaac pursued physics, and he excelled. By the time he was finishing his junior year, he had enough credits to graduate. Still, something nagged at me. He hadn't fully explored his interests. I should have let him decide for himself. Isaac's senior year was when everything began to change. He took a psychology elective, a class on substance abuse, and that's where everything started unraveling. For the first time, Isaac began to pull away. His conversations became terse, his presence at home distant. We assumed it was just senioritis, a phase he was going through. But when he went away for spring break, he didn't come back. What we got instead were frantic phone calls, a police report, and a cold body. We buried Isaac quietly in a private ceremony. The grief was overwhelming, but it wasn't until we opened his final letters that the truth came crashing down. Isaac had written to me, and his words will haunt me forever. In his letter, he explained the horrible truth. I had manipulated him, controlled him, and shaped him into the perfect son. The rush he got from making me proud, from doing what I asked, he realized it was the same as a drug. Isaac wrote that I had turned him into my puppet. I had implanted something in his brain, some unseen force that made him feel that euphoria every time he did something to please me. He couldn't escape it, and he was lost. The boy I had raised wasn't really him. It was a shell, a product of my desires. And now at the end of it all, Isaac was gone, and I was left to deal with the consequences. The letter was heartbreaking. I never realized the extent of what I had done. Isaac's perfect life, his achievements, his success, was all because I had shaped him, controlled him. He never had the chance to decide for himself. His whole life had been lived to please me, and in the end, I killed the person he was supposed to be. As my wife and I read the letter, I saw her anger. She blamed me just as Isaac had. She blamed me for everything, Isaac's pain, his death. She's downstairs now crying, but I know in time she'll understand. She'll forgive me. When she wakes up from the surgery, she'll come to see that I only wanted what was best for him. But right now, in the quiet of the basement, I sit with my guilt. I know I can never undo the damage. I was supposed to be his guide, his protector, but I destroyed him in the process. And now, all I can do is sit with my failure. Okay, so I have never been much of a Reddit guy, but have recently gotten on it out of interest of these isolated staircases found 30 or 40 miles in the woods. You know how it goes. A few hours pass and I find myself here. Anyways, I grew up in a military family, probably why I currently serve, and have heard endless stories about combat, barracks, shenanigans, and things of that sort, so I never paid a whole lot of attention. One night my uncle told me a story I'd have a hard time forgetting. I realized this was because you never hear of ghost stories in the military. So here it goes. One night around 3 a.m., an MP sits alone at one of the back gates of a small National Guard post in Mississippi. It was cold outside, so he sat inside of his guard box with a small space heater and a cup of coffee. He would have to radio in every hour or so in order to let his command know that he was okay and nothing had occurred throughout the night. As he sat alone reading a book, he heard a small wail coming from a few hundred yards up the gravel road he was posted at. It was too dark to see that far, so he left the inside of his guard box to get a better look. At this point, he was startled because the scream sounded like something out of a horror film, deep and sorrowful. To his surprise, after staring into the darkness for a moment, a young woman appears. She was covered in blood and limping down the road. Still distraught and screaming, she makes her way closer and closer to him. At this point, the soldier takes off in her direction in order to provide her any medical aid he could. Once they meet, she starts screaming that she had a wreck a ways up the road and her child was in the car. She begged him to go save my child. Realizing how cold it was, he wrapped his fleece jacket around her bloody body, covering it in blood. He placed her back in the guard box and took off in a sprint down the road. He arrived to find a car flipped upside down and a small child unharmed and crying in the back. Once he removed the child and laid him on the road, he went to check if anyone else was in the car. When he arrived back at the car, he couldn't believe what he saw. The woman from before, bloody and dead in the front seat, still strapped in. He removed her from the car and checked her pulse. She was gone. He grabbed the child and hurried back to the guard box in order to radio up to his unit. Upon his arrival, he finds his fleece jacket laying on the ground outside the box without a trace of blood on it. Hope y'all enjoyed this. It definitely gave me some chills when I heard it. People always associate ghosts with evil and negativity, but in this case, it just seemed like the mom's unfinished business was simply to save her child and had no need to roam the earth once that was finished. My mom was the kind of person who could seem like a wallflower until you got close, and then she'd surprise you with her knowledge of her favorite animal, the emperor penguin. She admired their journey of love and parenthood, a struggle and connection she identified with deeply. I was taught all the usual things about her. Her smile could light up a room, her laugh could cut through any awkward party, and her stride was full of confidence. To me, growing up, she was a goddess, a perfect being. But as you might expect, moms are supposed to be that way when we're children. My mom died when I was just 4 years old, taken by cancer in 18 brutal months. Tumors ravaged her body, stealing her joy and everything that made her who she was. I never really knew her, and in a sense, she had already been gone for years before I could even understand what mom truly meant. It's hard to miss someone you can't remember, but there was something she left behind. Milestone tapes. These were video messages for me, recorded by her to be opened during key moments of my life. First day of school, birthday, and so on. I didn't understand the significance of those videos until much later. I remember the first one. I had just lost my first baby tooth, and Grandpa Mihail sat me down to watch a video titled "Gone But Not Deleted," a video message from Leonora Stankowski. A bright logo flashed, and then there she was. My mom, young and full of life, in a black leather chair. Despite the joy in her voice, there was an undercurrent of sadness, an awareness of the time slipping away. In every video, her message remained constant. "I'll always be with you." The familiar phrase became a comfort as I grew, always there for every milestone. She was present for every joy, every injury, every heartbreak, even though she was gone. The years passed. In my teens, after a biking accident that left me with a broken arm, there she was again, recorded with a weak smile, offering her comfort in the form of advice and love. Despite her increasingly frail health, my mom continued to send me these tapes, always looking a little weaker but never losing her spirit. By 21, I only had 4 tapes left. The one about my first breakup was the last one I watched before everything went dark. My life spiraled. A mix of bad decisions, bad friends, and bad habits led me down a dangerous path. I reached for the bottle and pills, determined to end it all, but not before watching one last tape. The video flickered, and the familiar face of my mother appeared. Except this time, she was different. Her face was sunken, her eyes hollow, her voice shaky. But it wasn't just her appearance that was different. Something in the background caught my eye. A shadow that seemed to move, something sinister lurking just out of frame. As I stared, the figure seemed to come closer, its eyes glowing red, its mouth twisted in an unnatural grin. I recoiled in fear, vomiting up everything I had taken moments before. My mother's voice was soft, urging me to close my eyes and breathe, but the terror in the video was palpable. Then she whispered something that chilled me to the bone. "There is something lurking here, Nick, something ancient. It feeds on misfortune. It watches from the shadows and waits for small, tiny windows to make itself known." The presence was real and it knew me. After that night, everything changed. My vision blurred with the effects of the drugs, and I was haunted by nightmares. The shadow that had come from the background of my mother's last tape seemed to follow me, always lurking, always watching. I couldn't escape it, but I fought to get better. I went through therapy, faced my demons, and slowly I began to rebuild. I met Natalie when I was 26. She was my second chance at love, someone who understood pain and suffering, someone who had walked through hell and survived. Together, we got engaged and eventually married. And like I had hoped, my mother appeared in one last video message. She looked frail, but she was still radiant. She congratulated me, and with tears in her eyes, she spoke of the penguins, how they walked miles, enduring hardship for the sake of parenthood. She told me to protect my family, to love well, and experience everything life had to offer. And once more, she whispered, "I'll always be with you." Soon after, Natalie and I started talking about having a child. As excited as I was, I couldn't shake the memories of my mom's words. I didn't want my daughter to grow up without her, just as I had. I rewatched those tapes, clinging to the hope that they would somehow guide me in my own journey as a father. But when I watched the video about the broken bone again, I saw it. The shadow was there, just as before. It was bigger now, more menacing, and it was coming closer. I heard my mom's voice, frantic, telling me not to look. But I couldn't help it. I stared at it. And then I heard it, the same inhuman voice, echoing my mother's words. That was when I knew. The curse that had followed my family was real. It passed from mother to son, father to daughter, and it was always there lurking in the background. When Phoebe was born, I held her close, determined to protect her from the shadows that haunted me. But I couldn't shake the fear that one day, the curse would find her too. One night after Phoebe's second birthday, I was reminded of my mom's mantra. I recited it to her, and when I did, I felt the presence, the same one from all those years ago, as if it had been waiting for me to say it. "I'll always be with you," I whispered, just as my mom had done. And though I didn't see it, I felt the shadow retreat for now. But I know it's waiting, always waiting.